Hey,
I never
I'm
done this
like,
before.
the crazy part is like I did, and for a second I was like, wait, how do I add another person? Okay, awesome. It's so good to see your face.
I
It's
know I
like
haven't seen you in
live.
so long.
Sheesh. Oh, so makes my heart warm.
I know. I feel like
Uh,
I'm gonna be smiling on like
I
95%
know,
of these
right?
lives.
I love it. I know. I saw Miss Jackie like it, so hopefully she jumps on.
I know I haven't seen
And
her in a long time either.
I know, right? It's crazy. It's like when you grow up and then you just go about your adult life. Like sometimes you're like, wow, this is like, because you're in New York now, ish,
Yes, ish.
ish.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I know
I guess we'll talk
that.
about it.
Word, word. I see some people have joined. We'll let a couple more come on, but I'm really excited. I started this business in January, and it's been somewhat of a crazy feat. And part of it is like it's not anything new for me in terms
Hmm.
of the supports that I hope to provide and the spaces I hope to be in. But it's definitely a different field. This whole social media life, like at this point, I'm like, is the angle right? Like, are
Yeah.
we? But I think it's a nice way. I've heard a lot of people wanting to engage more on Instagram and social media just to hear like snippets about people's stories. Again, Informal Convos is honestly just a space, one, to highlight wins. I think there are really great stories to be shared, particularly from communities of color that have overcome a lot of challenges when it comes to educational accomplishments. And so I just really want to be part of bringing positivity to that world. And yeah, and also providing support. And like, there's enough world in here for all of us to win. So that's
Yeah,
pretty much it.
definitely. And it's
Yeah.
easy
So,
now, I think, with like social media. Like it's just so easy to just grab your phone and like, oh, like what is this person talking about? Like what are they doing and stuff like that. So
right. I still haven't gotten the hang of that what's the hangout where you call in and you just hear people talking? You know,
I feel like
I got
I can't help you too much. I'm like, I just,
maybe somebody knows what it's called, but I've like joined it. You have to like get invited. I guess they're starting the exclusivity the way that
oh,
like,
okay.
and there's so many stuff to like. It's just a lot. It's a lot, and I'm like, I don't have that much time to just be hopping on and hearing conversations about relationships and finance. I need to listen to,
No,
but
yeah, me
like.
too.
Yeah, but for sure. All right, we got quite a few, and there's a people joining in and checking in. So we'll just get started. So again, Jose, thank you for joining me today. And
Thank you for
so I
having
guess
me.
introduce yourself. Where are you from? You can also, I guess, highlight where we met because I was your advisor at Rutgers University, SEBS EOF,
Yeah.
the family science strong, and so, and I think I was still a stu- student 2013. No, I came back as an advisor at that point.
Yeah, yeah. It might
Yeah,
have been your first year when I was there.
I believe so. I
Yeah.
believe you were my first year as a full time. I worked for SEBS so long. Sometimes I forget where I was. So yeah, let's tell the people who you are, where you're from.
So my name's Jose. I was born in Puerto Rico and I grew up in North Jersey in Patterson. And I went to Rutgers for my undergrad. I majored in exercise science, applied kinesiology. Undergrad was definitely a journey. Yeah, definitely like ups and downs. Like, will I make it? Will I not? We'll see. There was that. Definitely got a lot of like advisoring and mentoring along the way. Met some amazing people, some people that I still talk to now, like some friends, advisors clearly that I'm still in contact with. So that was good. And then now I recently got my second degree, which is the career that I'm in now, which
Awesome.
is nursing.
Okay, nursing. Let me tell
Yes.
you, and I remember that was when we came in, we were like, we had some goals there,
Yeah.
and but I think the interesting thing about a journey is that we sometimes at whatever point we are and whatever exposure we've had at that point, we're convinced by the experiences that we've had. But as we open ourselves up to experiencing new things and being in new environments, I think we learn ourselves a little bit more, and then you end up making decisions about career moves that are
Yeah.
actually more fitting for who you are and who you want to become. Because I think, especially in freshman year of college, like the journey of just getting into college can still be so rough for first gen,
Yeah.
particularly that it's
Yeah,
like,
definitely for first gen because it sounds negative and I don't mean it to be negative, but people don't realize that as a first gen, like you're already starting at a disadvantage because you're going into, uncharted territory. Like you don't know what's going on. Like you don't have anyone to tell you, this is what I did. Because, you learn from people's mistakes. They tell you their stories, they tell you their
mm,
histories, and they give you advice. And they counsel you. So first gens don't really have that. So we're kind of just figuring it out and making it up as we go, like through the
it's like the
years.
duck syndrome, like your feet like this
Yeah.
underneath, but you're like, you're trying to play it cool, like I'm good though. It's cool.
Yeah.
So I guess like let's talk a little bit about your journey in terms of like what you can remember. I know some of me, like my EOF program, I try to block some of the stuff out because I was just, it was survival for the fittest. But but in terms of your journey at Rutgers, talk about some areas that you felt like maybe you've developed significantly as a student and also as a person, and potentially has led to some of your decisions in your professional.
Yeah, I think well, EOF and just Rutgers and overall, like I said, it was like super rocky. It was definitely a journey. There were so many things that I learned along the way. I think that one of the main ones that kind of just sticks out to me because I still use it now is, and it sounds so simple because everyone talks about it, but it's actually time management.
Hmm.
I'll never forget with when our advising sessions and when we had to have our weekly meetings, you guys would give us those grids
Oh,
that
yeah.
like that you literally put a square, and it sounds so funny, but if you believe it or not, I still do a form of that now.
Hmm.
And literally you guys would give us a grid, and I remember we'd hand it in for it to be approved or not, and it'll be as little things as like, oh, you didn't put a little block for lunch, and in my head I'm like, yeah, but obviously like I know I'm gonna eat. And then you guys are like, no, but you have to account for it. Like you need to put it on the grid because everything needs to be accounted for. So that like crazy structure of like, I'm gonna give myself 20 minutes for this, 30 minutes for studying, 20 minutes to relax. Like
Hmm.
little things like that have really stayed with me, and have really helped me, in my other endeavors, like when I got my other degree, and even now, like stepping into my career, like time management is such a huge thing.
It's super essential to like be able to allot time to specific tasks. I could definitely attest to that. I mean, starting my business was like a response to someone telling me, "Oh, we could have paid you for that." And I was like, "Wait a minute."
Mm.
And so I started it, but then as the work started coming in, I was like, "Wait, wait." So I still have a full-time job. And so really being able to be like, after this time in my evening, I got to concentrate on my personal business just to be able to at least grow it at the same time as I'm still working my main job. So I
Yeah.
guess when you think about your journey, and this could be more recent things, what factors, and these could be people, events, moments, do you think hugely contributed to your overall success at this point?
Oh my God, there's so many, and like it sounds cliche, but it really does take a village. Like that's definitely accurate. It definitely does take a village. Um, but believe it or not, and it's not just because we're on a live together or not, but I remember there was a specific moment. I don't know if you'll remember, but I was in the EOF office, and I'm not. And the crazy thing is that I think this was after I graduated because I graduated, right? I did my 4 years, and then
Mm-hmm.
after that, I kind of was like figuring out like, okay, like what are you gonna do next? Because my major didn't really translate into like a career.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't like quite work out the way I wanted it to. So I went back to Rutgers. I was living super far, but I went back to Rutgers to take some classes, some prerequisites that I know, like, okay, well, I know I want to do healthcare no matter what. So whatever I do in healthcare, I know I need these classes, so let me just take them.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into the EOF office just because I was like, oh, like let me just say hi. And you were not even working there at the time, but I think you were visiting Miss Moore or something. I don't know. It was a coincidence that I caught you both at the same time. And we
Right.
went to a back room, and you started like writing, we just started talking about like, oh, like what are your plans? Like what do you want to do? What are you thinking about? And I don't know if you remember this, but you literally like drew a whole bunch of squares and rectangles like horizontally, and you made this huge timeline. And you're like, okay, if you take this class this time, around this time is when applications for this are due. Around this time is when you would get accepted. Around so like that whole thing, like believe it or not, I was kind of like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, this is what I need to be doing. Like, so from that moment, I was like, not that like I was in a rush, but it's like, okay, like put the batteries on. Like,
Right.
everything needs to be planned and structured. So from that little timeline, you don't know what that timeline did to me. I was like, oh, sheesh. I was like, I feel like I'm behind already. Like, I need to hurry up and go. So it's crazy having someone lay it out for you to see. And that's kind of what advising is, because
Yeah.
people think that like advising and mentoring and all that, especially in college, is just like, oh, you know, take these classes. But anybody can do that. You can find that out online. But like, it's invaluable talking to a person and them telling you, you know, besides what classes you need, their experience, and they can also draw on other people's experience and like
Hmm.
teach you because they talk to so many people.
Right.
So just seeing that timeline and seeing like, you know, when I should do everything by, really struck me, and I was like, oh, this is like how I need to approach my like when I'm making moves type thing,
Hmm.
like whether that be school, career, money. I was like, I need to lay it all out like this because this is a good
Later.
visual.
Right, right. You know what's funny is that I do remember running into you when I did come back to visit. And I don't remember what we did in the back room, but I remember it was like you were like, I need to get my life together.
Yeah.
And then and then and because I had transitioned specifically into the health professions, I was getting inundated with like all of this information about health professions, particularly, and like the way the application cycles work. And so you benefited from like new information that I had just been overwhelmed with. And I was like, yo, you got to structure it because it's crazy. And people don't realize that specifically in healthcare careers in a span, whether it's MD, DO, PT, nursing, these things you can't just apply like 1 month and be accepted the next month. A lot of these things have cycles, depending if they
Right.
have openings for, spring or summer. Like you have to pay attention to those things. And then competitiveness and fit is important because there's so many, but they also concentrate on different things and offer different opportunities. So it's important for people to understand like making certain decisions isn't just as quick as saying, "Oh, I want to go to this school,"
Yeah,
and just
definitely.
doing it. So
Yeah, it's definitely not
that's
as simple as
crazy.
an application or anything like that. It's something that has to be planned out and structured, and it's like more than prerequisites. It's like, you know, how am I going to stand out? Because, like you said, it is competitive.
Right, right. I do think one of the funny stories that I remember in my head, particularly, was from your that summer program
Oh
when you
God.
were panicking about math and you came to me and was like, "What am I gonna do if I fail this?" And I was like, "Yo, you better do what you got to do when you got to do it." I specifically, and you were like, "I don't even know what that means." And like I remember asking you like, "How's that? How did the exam go?" You was like, "Yo, I had to do what I had to do and I had to do it." And I'm like, and that's really when it comes when that pressure is on, you got to figure out a way to swim because it like especially for many of us, sinking is not an option.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
and so if you can't do the backstroke, you better turn around and try to swim underwater. Like I don't know at this point.
Right. No, and it's funny that you say that because for when I for to get accepted into nursing school, I had to go in for an interview. And one of the questions that I always think about this, they're like, "Oh, like what makes you interesting?"
Hmm.
And it kind of like speaks to what you just said about like you got to do what you got to do. Like if you can't do the front stroke, do the back stroke, whatever.
Yeah.
They were like, "What makes you interesting?" And I was like, and I definitely feel like I got this from undergrad and talking to you guys and figuring all these like detours and stuff. I told them my answer to the question was, you know, one thing about me is that like I am gonna get it done. Like I'm gonna get to my goal. If if I need to, if the door is closed, I will find a window.
That's it.
If the window is locked, I'm let's
Just
find the
just
underground tunnel.
I'm about
Like
to say,
let's like
break
there
down
is
the whole wall.
always literally like there is that's one thing about me, and I think that undergrad and all you guys definitely like helped foster that in me. Like I'm gonna find a way no matter what. Like there is
Right.
always another way.
That's definitely that determination. And so when people ask like, how do you communicate resilience? I think that is one of those big things where it's like you find a way. And it sometimes it may not be like the pattern, like the timing may not happen like the way you specifically planned, but you build in those contingencies. If this doesn't happen,
Right.
then and if you have that plan beforehand, when you get to that like crossroads, you can already like decide this is what I'm going to do in spite of. So I guess if you had to pick, so one, first tell everybody specifically what you're doing now within nursing, and maybe like what really made you decide that nursing was the pursuit that you were going to actually go forth in, even though healthcare had been in your like purview.
Yeah. So right now specifically, I am an oncology nurse. So I work at a cancer center. It is the second cancer center in the nation, which I'm like super proud of. So no, yeah, I love it there. I think it's amazing. So I'm an oncology nurse. I'm working on getting my oncology certification because nowadays nothing counts if you're not certified.
Right, right.
I'm working on that. But it's been awesome, my experience with patients and everything. And it's been like such a full circle moment, like getting to where I am because I always struggle with the fact that like after college, like I had a good job, but I'm like, okay, like I need a career
Hmm.
because there's a difference. And then I think as far as like I always knew that I was interested in science. Like I always knew that I liked science, right? So when I went into undergrad, I'm like, all right, I'll major in bio. I'm pretty sure that's like what everybody's first thought is,
Right.
right? Like, all
All the
right, I'll major
time.
in bio because I
All
like
the time.
science. But then like I'm like, okay, but like some of these things like microbio and this and that, I'm like, all right, do I really want to like take that? Like, I
Hmm.
don't know if I find that interesting. So I decided going with exercise science because I was very interested in like anatomy and phys type stuff. So I was like, okay, like I'm really interested in this. So I'm just gonna stick with this. I'm not saying that I regret it because I don't, but I guess in the moment I didn't see how that major what didn't translate into something that like I would have wanted because it's a very like physical therapy heavy major
Right.
and I didn't know if that didn't really like call out to me as much. So after I graduated, I got a job at an urgent care, and that's I feel like when I really became like immersed in the whole healthcare field, and I worked with physicians and PAs. And for a while, I was thinking, all right, let me take the recs for. I was thinking about like postbacks for med school or like applying to PA, applying to nursing. I was like, I'm gonna do one of these three because they're
Hmm.
like they really called to me. Ultimately, I just had some experiences with nurses, and it just kind of was like, okay, I think this is what I want to be doing. Like I saw them at work, and I was like, okay, this is like out of all three, I think this is the one that's like calling to
That's
me,
your
and I'm
pace.
so right,
Yeah.
and I'm so glad that I chose it because I love it. Like I can't really see myself doing any others now that I'm doing this.
Right, right. So I guess like we meant to make these like 15-minute segments. It's just so much. We might have to bring you back eventually, Dick. But but I didn't see any questions. Like I don't know if I said that. Like if you guys have any particular questions, you can definitely put it in the chat. This whole waving mechanism is like a distractor. If you got like ADHD or something, you just keep like looking at them. But it's pretty cool. But so I guess lastly, when you think about everything that you've learned about yourself, as you've kind of as not kind of but as you've developed into what seems like a more like you seem more confident and almost self-actualized about kind of your purpose and how you see yourself playing a role within healthcare. I guess like do you have any type of like if you have to give some kind of insight or word of advice for whether it's students in undergrad as they're kind of still trying to navigate that space, and we know it got real interesting in the past year and a half with COVID that has
Yeah.
definitely switched up a lot of things, but also for people who are potentially like career changes, like they're looking for shifts or they're just kind of like trying to really navigate their professional like arena. Do you have any words of wisdom that you would want to share with people and let them know based on your experience?
Yeah, one of the things, because like I said, I think we learn from like our history and our mistakes. it's going back to students, and even you don't necessarily have to be a student for this, but in terms of like advising and getting and like having a mentor and counseling, the advice that I would give to people, because I feel like this happened to me, is don't fall into the notion that just because you don't need counseling or advising, like you shouldn't get it. Because like for example, when I was in undergrad, like I was the student that got straight A's. Like I did well in my classes.
Mm.
After I learned time management, I was fine. Like that was not a problem for me. But I feel like I didn't see the bigger picture, if that makes sense. Like I was so focused on my goal of like doing well in school and graduating that after I graduated, I was like, okay, like, well, what's next?
Now
And
what's
I
next,
think,
right?
yeah, and I think that if I would have like, because I think when I first started, I was like, heavy on the counseling and the mentoring, but kind of like, once you get to like that third and fourth year, you're like, oh no, I got it. Like I can do it on my
Hmm.
own. So I think that if you just stay like counsel heavy and surround yourself with people who like know what they're talking about, like, you know, just because you don't need it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go for the resources. Like they're there. And after you graduate, like that's kind of hard to find. Like people
Right,
are not really offering that unless, you're gonna pay for it.
right,
So
right,
so I think that it's important, like, don't fall into the trap of like, oh, like I got it. Because like I'm sure you do. I'm sure you're doing great, but you never know like what other like optic another person has to share, or like what other way they could spin it. It might save you a step. It might help you see the bigger picture. And I think I
right.
would have gotten that if I would have like really, really stuck with it.
Yeah. And you know what? It's not definitely all on you. I think because after you graduate, there's this like releasing, I call it an eviction notice. Like y'all get an eviction and it'll be like, bye. And y'all are tossed out in this very dynamic world that's ever changing. And part of what the mission of Powerhouse Connect is really to try to open up a space for people who are kind of like in that funny space. Like you're not an undergrad where you're not getting this like maybe advising, you don't have it accessible, but you're also not necessarily in an environment where you're working where people are necessarily supportive of helping you envision your future because they just want you to do your job.
Right.
Because and so trying to provide a space, a collective space that people can have like a freelancing advisor that just kind of helps you see that bigger picture. And a lot of it just comes out of, like you said, I talk to a lot of students that come from different backgrounds. So just merely by having all of those stories kind of like in my head, sometimes
Right.
I can offer an insight, not because I've experienced it myself, but I've seen other students overcome or go that route. And so it is definitely helpful to utilize people, whether it's coaches, or advisors and things to definitely help you explore and make hopefully more, it's still internally invested decisions, but it at least gives you, like you said, another optic and another vantage point to
Right.
think about.
Exactly.
So I appreciate your time. I think that much of who you are has come out of the communities that have invested in you along the way. And at least I could say, I know SubZOF is proud. We are very happy to see. Look, Damaris is wishing you well.
Oh, hey,
Uh,
Damaris. I know I want to go back. I want to be like, now that I've like things have calmed down and I'm like getting the hang of the job more, I definitely
mhm,
want to like reach out and be like, if you guys need me, let me know. I remember
right.
going back and speaking to like one of the incoming like SEBS EOF classes. I love doing that stuff
Yeah.
because I'm like that person that when I find out like a trick or like something cool or like a
You want to
shortcut,
share it. You
I
be
just
like,
want to
hey,
share it because I'm like, yo, like I just found out like something super cool. Like, let me get you in on it. So, and
right,
I feel like that's what I'm doing when I'm talking to people who like are about to go through something that I went through. So
right.
I gotta connect with them more
Well,
because
you
I'm
hear
definitely
that,
interested in
Damaris?
doing
He said he can come.
it.
She's still there, and I'm sure the EOF community will absolutely benefit. This new generation is different, and so in many amazing ways, but also I think the possibilities are super endless because they're talented and they have access. I mean, globalization in itself just allows them to have access to the world in a way that you didn't, and I definitely didn't. And so I think, like you said, the more the merrier. And she said she will be messaging you.
Oh, nice.
Um, so I just want to say I appreciate your time today. Personally, thank you. And so I will be looking to highlight all your wins and all of that in the future. So if you ever do an endeavor and you want to put it out there, definitely send it to me. The whole idea is that this is just a community that is trying to empower people in living purpose on purpose, living on purpose. I don't know. I haven't worked it out yet. I don't got my tagline. It's okay. I am y'all favorite melanated advisor. And I thank you guys for joining us at the Powerhouse
Thank
Connect
you so much for
Live.
having me. I appreciate talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah. See you later.
See you.